Bones and Bobbins podcast is now on Patreon. Would you like access to bonus episodes, digital extras, exclusive merch, and more? Well, join us in the Curiosity Shop at patreon.com/Bones and Bobbins.
Your generous support helps make the show happen and will also earn you our very eternal gratitude and entry into our private Patreon-only Facebook group.
We're all kinds of fun.
Yeah, where the delightful things happen.
That's where I post weirdness in the middle of the night when I have insomnia.
Same.
If I am tortured, you too shall see.
I like that about you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In a dusty old shop on a forgotten old street, you'll find two witches with books 3 boxes deep. Next to rusty old needles and faded red thread, you'll come in for yarn, but leave with pigments instead. Whether poisons or patterns, we're always discreet, where creepy and crafty and morbidity meet. Welcome to the Bones and Bobbins podcast. Hello, morbid makers. We are your slightly creepy,
Mildly disconcerting,
somewhat sinister,
delightfully discomposed,
opaquely odd,
merrily morbid,
marvelously misanthropic hosts.
And this is Bones and Bobbins, Season 2, Episode 19. She walks in beauty like a fright.
And now that poem is going to be stuck in my head right with the song that's been stuck in my head for 2 days. Anyway, I'm Haley from Red Handled Scissors and the Very Serious Crafts podcast, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi, I'm Natalie from Uber Dark Designs, an official true crime creative. My pronouns are she, her.
Yay!
Yay!
We like a good pronoun.
We do. We like
true.
a well-used pronoun.
Indeed.
So,
whoa.
hi.
You keep lighting up things on my screen. All right.
Oh, it's going to be one of those. It's going to be one of those.
It is. What's going on?
I'm tired. I have this yin and yang because I'm super tired and everything's felt kind of heavy lately.
Yeah.
And I think that we are not alone in heaviness feeling, and I know that we've covered this before, but
yeah.
Dude, the world is not okay right now. And it is okay to not be okay. That's a normal reaction. There's some completely fucked up stuff happening, and it's so hard to even keep track of it all, let alone process it all and figure out what you can handle processing and not processing.
I don't think you can keep track of it all.
No, but it's, yeah.
Also, sometimes your brain chemistry just doesn't play along.
Exactly.
Like, I've been in a depression cycle for at least a month. I think it's lifting. I think. The last couple of days. But
I think mine's lifting, but it's weird because I've been oddly, super productive.
You have been really productive.
Yeah, and I keep blaming it on the cold brew.
I mean, that'll do it.
Plus, I think I have, the opposite of seasonal... I mean, I have, opposite seasonal disorder. Fall and winter are my jam.
Yes.
I love fall and winter. Summer is not. I don't...
No, fall is when I come alive.
Right. So yeah. Things are heavy a bit, and just a reminder that store-bought neurons and serotonin and dopamine, whatever comes in your body.
Neurotransmitters, perhaps?
There you go. Hormones. Anything that you take that makes you happy and helps you function is absolutely okay and should be normalized.
Very okay.
Right.
We love them. We're big fans.
Big fans. And so you have a safe space here, and I think it's been a while since we've mentioned that, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yes, that is... It's always good to say, because every time we do say something, we get a couple emails from people who are like, hey, thanks for doing that.
That thing?
Yeah.
I liked that thing. Yeah.
And...
So you're not alone. We're here.
No, you're totally not alone.
And odds are one, if not both of us, are up in the middle of the night, so if you reach out, we may see it.
Chances are very good that you might get an immediate reaction, because I hate sleeping. And it just is.
So and as a result of the heavery, I still have not released my Halloween and fall line, even though like half of it's done. I just need to like photograph and all that stuff. But because my brain is not always functioning, I guess typically. It never is typically, but the best way to, I guess, kickstart yourself into launching things is to go, sure, you want me to do this craft artisan fair on, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks from now? Sure, I'll be there. I have no stock. I have nothing prepared, but I'm like, absolutely, I will do that thing, and now I will get all the things done, because I seem to function well under pressure.
So me too. Give me a 6-week book deadline, and boy, will you get a solid product. Yeah.
So I gave myself, I inadvertently gave myself a...
swift kick in the pants?
Yeah. So I'm excited about that, to see how that all turns out. I cleared out and organized my hard drive, which was getting all cattywampus. It was bothering me. So, yeah.
That's satisfying.
It was really satisfying. And then it was like, I don't remember this, but you guys need to see this. And you're like, we had that I remember that. I remember that. So, yeah.
Oh, that photo.
That photo, I was like, dude, I don't know why it's saved.
I am fairly certain that you sent that to me.
Probably.
Yep. But it may have gone the other direction. Either way. Yeah, this is a photo that was shared in our Facebook group that involves dolls carrying a corpse.
Yeah, it's probably the best and worst Halloween outdoor decor I've ever seen.
Yeah, it reminds me when I found a bunch of bags of mannequins.
Oh.
Like black trash bags filled with mannequins.
And they're usually not ever mannequins, so it's a good thing they were.
My blood ran cold when I saw them. And I was like, oh no. But I also have to go look. Because if I don't go look and there's someone there, that's gonna be a problem. And so I went over completely ready to see dead bodies. And, like, this is in my neighborhood, like, down the street from me. And it would have been a very weird... And it was 5:45 in the morning. Like,
I can see you calculating if you can tell if there's seepage. I can see you, like, pre-calculating.
It had rained.
Oh, no!
Yeah. There's a photo of them that I have somewhere. That
tell me that you procured them for fun, because I totally...
I didn't know why they were there. And what had happened to them. But it was just like feet sticking up out of... It was a whole thing. They were mannequins.
Okay, good.
I was very awake after that. And I do have a photo of the trash bags filled with mannequins. And we're talking full human-sized mannequins. We're not talking small.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how you doing? What's going on with you? How's the booking doing?
Booking is booking.
Booking is booking.
That is happening. Once again, my stitching has started for my latest book, which is good. That means I have also just purchased containers specifically to organize my already organized embroidery floss in, because
like you do.
Procrastination by organization is my drug of choice.
This time, though, you have a thimble. So it'll take a while for honorary bloodshed.
I already bled on this.
I tried.
It happens. The first project before calluses have built up, it's sort of like playing guitar.
Yeah.
You're gonna bleed.
Indeed.
And you're gonna stick a blunt needle through your finger. You just are.
Yeah, that fact is probably the only thing that's the only thing that occupies any part of my brain that says a giant tufting gun may not be wise. But the rest of me is like, no, you need that giant tufting gun. As does Amazon, because they keep showing me the ad.
I mean, you shouldn't shoot it as. It's like a weapon. You should not point it at anything that you don't intend to shoot.
Right.
And that is the rule.
As long
like
as it
gun
stops.
safety. Yeah. If you do not intend to shoot it, do not point your weapon at it. And so I think that is the approach for the tufting gun.
I think so too, but I also fully know where my, I guess, klutziness lies, and so if you ever get a middle of the night, I have tufted my foot on accident because I dropped it.
Well, I fully expect to get that text. Well, I was telling you earlier that I have been singing West Coast mumble rap for 2 days straight. I am not young enough for this, is the thing. But earlier today, I was rapping at my cats, and I happened to be over by my bedroom window, and I looked up, and there's a goddamn jumping spider!
Oh,
like,
no.
right in the window casement. And, like, it's here, my face is right nearby, and we both freeze. And I spent a good hour, like, fully wasted time trying to get that stupid spider out the window.
Oh, no. I actually have my own little window spider. I named her Charlotte.
Is it a jumping spider? Because this is a zebra spider.
Yeah, no, she doesn't jump, but she has some fabulous little, she managed to find a couple of flies. And she's got these, little snacks for later that are all nicely balled up into little pockets. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. Jumping spiders aren't my favorite. I mean, we have an arrangement.
Okay.
A family of zebra spiders lives in my fire escape garden.
Okay.
They have lived there for as long as I have had any plants out there. And as long as they don't come in, we're cool.
That is fair. I mean.
But this one came in, and I don't know, it had, like, fangs with, like, chunky things on the end. And I just like, what are you even doing? I don't understand. It was not impressed with my wrapping. And then it would not go out the window. And it kept hiding because I live in an old ass building where there are, lots of cracks and things because nothing was built to standard sizes. And it just kept hiding. And so I had to hang out, like, draped over the cat tree, watching this fucking spider. until it finally, like, it would get very close to the window, and then I would move to open the window, and it would scurry back and hide. Finally, we had a come to Jesus talk, in which I informed it that it was going to come to Jesus if it didn't get the fuck out of my apartment.
You're being evicted. You've overstayed your welcome. Let me show you the door. Or window in this case.
Yeah. So, it hopped out after an hour of me, like, trying to steer it along with my shoe. And I couldn't, I considered killing it, but it kept jumping at me. And I was like, all right, fine. All right. So anyway, and my mom just texted me just right then in the middle of that. So I'm going to take that as my cue to stop talking about spiders.
All right. Do you want to take a quick break to thank all of our fantastic Curiosity Shop members over on Patreon?
Yes.
Well, it's time to give a totally normal and not at all creepy welcome to our newest members, the Schmidt family and Kim.
Hello, the Schmidt family and Kim.
Hello and welcome.
Yes, we are very, very pleased to have you in our midst.
We are.
Trapped in our webs, perhaps? All right, I'm done thinking about spiders because then I'm just going to start feeling crawly things all over. And
oh, no. No.
I have a phobia. Like, very real, all of blood drains out of my body phobia of arachnids.
Then we shall change subject.
Yeah. That is, like, the most basic phobia I could possibly have.
Is it?
I have agoraphobia.
Yeah.
That's less pedestrian. Literally.
Indeed.
Yes, you're welcome. Anyway, Curiosity Shop members, you all are the best. And we would totally go explore hidden old graveyards in the woods with you. But I gotta tell you, if there are spider webs, I'm out.
I will clear the way. I will be your spider defense system.
Thank you.
You're
all
welcome.
Right. Then I'm back in.
So, if you want in on this fun, not only will you get some really great surprises that we're working on, but you'll get a huge backlog of Patreon-only episodes.
So much.
Including next week, where we talk decorative gourd season, bitches.
Yow! I don't even know where that came from.
I don't know. It's late night recording. We're gonna get silly.
Oh, I'm trying not to sing so hard.
That's not true. You're trying not to mumble rap.
Okay, yes, that is true, but nobody needs to learn how to buy pot from a kid in California.
Right.
Nobody.
They've got dispensaries. They're all fancy and stuff now.
Oh, yeah. What's that kid doing even selling pot anymore?
He's trying to sound like he's tough.
He's like 22. He can just go buy it.
Seriously.
Huh.
They make that shit in gummies now. Go get a lollipop, dude. Like, just saying.
Yes. Okay. That's pretty much all there is to say about that, I think. Do you want me to tell you a story?
I would love a story.
You may or may not have heard of a fabled woman who was nicknamed the Countess of Monte Cristo in the 1920s because of her outrageous spending. Well,
she'd have bought a lot of pot.
Damn it!
I will stop anything.
Okay. I'm trying so hard.
I'm sorry. I will stop.
Trying so hard. Because I already did it once and it didn't get out of my system. So, all right. Anyway, allow me to introduce you to Mrs. Margaret Smith-Wilkinson.
Nice.
All right. So, the story of Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson is a wild ride of 1920s excess, and it features a somewhat surprising high society con artist, an obscene number of evening gowns, hotel-related fortunes, and a very young third husband who was probably a dressmaker.
Nice.
Yeah.
Those are all the elements of a good story.
Yeah. It's a pretty good story. So, this person, Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson, absolutely did exist. And there are many, many, many contemporary sources within her lifetime where she was interviewed personally. People talked about her. So she isn't just a person of legend, which her story would kind of maybe lead you to believe. Mm-hmm. But she did exist, and she was born Margaret Wilkinson in either Warwick, Birmingham, or Handsworth, Staffordshire, around 1866, to working class parents who were listed as sword and matchmakers. Yeah. Which is weird enough that I kind of wonder if the census records were misread or illegible. Because that is...
like, match that you use to light things, or matchmaker.
I have no idea. I mean, definitely sword, S-W-O-R-D, and
exciting.
Match, but there's no real additional detail there. I could not pull up the census records specifically, so I did not look at them myself because I did not want to pay for them.
Valid.
For one line of looking. But this all seems to be corroborated by multiple sources and also time period sources. So, I don't know. So, in 1890, in her early 20s, she married 46-year-old Francis Dunk. And Frank was a successful man in the hotel trade, and he kept specifically the Victoria Hotel in Station Street, which was one of the biggest hotels in Nottingham. And the couple had a son that they named Henry Bishop Dunk, which sounds like a character.
It does. Dunk is just kind of an unfortunate last name, I think.
Yeah, Frank Dunk.
Frank.
That's the husband. So, Frank, from whom it is said that she inherited much of the fortune that she would later spend so lavishly, died in 1906. And after Frank's death, Margaret remained in the hotel business. She was also called Peggy because, you know,
Margaret turns into Peggy.
Yeah. So
names were weird back then, man.
Yeah. So Peg here stayed in the hotel business, and then in 1910, she got remarried, and her second husband, Thomas Harold Southerns, was also in the hotel business. And at this time, she was 45, and he was 29. And that's...
Get it, Peggy.
That's not even the most dramatic.
Okay.
I only say that because husband number 3 really just blows that one out of the water. Oh, wow. So, sadly, Thomas would also leave Margaret a widow for the second time. He passed away in 1913.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's young and not very long.
Right. Oh. And there is no indication that she's a Black Widow.
I was going to say.
These were all pretty normal deaths, although there's an upcoming death that is a bit weird. So if you really wanted to spin some stories, but rumors didn't exist at the time that would indicate anything was wrong. Okay. So, and there were actual gossip columns, so
yeah,
I would assume that someone would have said something. So after Thomas died, Margaret took over Chesterfield House, which is a very fancy hotel and bath destination. Okay. And it was very, very... It looked like a giant mansion, okay. And it kind of weirdly reminds me of, like, the old Borscht Belt resorts, kind of like in Dirty Dancing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Except, like, the main house, not the little cabins. But it's as though you went to stay on someone's estate.
Okay.
In their mansion. And so this was a high-end place, so Peggy's doing all right for herself.
Right? She's got like a little monopoly starting to pile up there.
Yeah. And I could not find a whole lot of information about how she ended up the proprietress of Chesterfield House, but as she had been, like, she had owned the previous hotels and had inherited them. And right. So...
But he was in it too, you said. So
yeah, like, both of the previous husbands were in the hotel business, and they seemed to be successful at it. And she also seemed to be a successful businesswoman. Like, she knew what she was doing. And...
that's pretty amazing for that time period.
Yeah, there's a pamphlet from the Chesterfield House that I believe she wrote corrections on, that was scanned, and so you can see, like, her handwriting, and she was sending it off to get newer versions of the pamphlet rewritten in 1917. And so at this point it was her as I believe the title that she had was managing director, but she owned the place. And her son from her first marriage, Henry, died in Chesterfield House in 1919 at the age of 23.
Oh, man.
This is where it gets weird. Or weirder. He had tuberculosis, which was not terribly uncommon, but that's not what killed him, at least not directly. He was having a breathing fit, and there was a sanatorium built onto the top of Chesterfield House for him. Okay. And so he went up to get fresh air, and as he was using the window to breathe, he leaned against a balustrade and fell. And when he fell through a glass roof below him.
Oh, like you see in all the movies.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
God, that poor woman.
yeah. So
Kind
he
of.
died.
I'm still side-eyeing her on that, I'm just saying.
Yes. I have no idea. Moving along, she married for a third time in 1920, this time to Henry Edward Smith, who changed his surname to Smith-Wilkinson before their marriage. Because she apparently, he was quoted as saying that it wasn't a fancy enough name. Like, Smith didn't stand out enough. So she insisted upon hyphenating her maiden name and her married name, and insisted upon him changing his name to it. And
Peggy's kind of a
that was
boss-ass bitch.
Yeah, that was apparently fine with him.
Okay.
And he was in his early 20s at the time. I believe he was 23 or 24 when she died. So spoiler alert, she's gonna die. But she at this time was at least 54.
Damn.
Yeah. And he's hot. Like, surprisingly so. Or at least I wasn't expecting that to be the case. Hold on, I'm going to drop this in the chat. Or not in the chat, into the document for you to see.
I mean, she was worth a lot. So
There we go.
depending on his character as a human being, I mean.
He seemed to have just gotten the short end of the stick on much of this. But yeah, she was not a fetching woman. So her husband was like a tall, dapper-looking, exactly what you would expect from 1920s dude. And she was just normal-looking. And she had glasses, and she was much shorter than him.
She looks almost like his grandma. Like,
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, she could have been.
That's true. That's
At the time. But, yeah.
Peggy, I guess.
So she's, like, short, and she's got big boobs and big hips, and is just deeply normal looking.
She looks very Midwest.
She does. She looks very Midwestern. And she just looks unremarkable. Like, you wouldn't see her and have any opinion unless you had context.
There is zero striking about her. Like,
yeah, I mean,
she would blend in anywhere.
Just looks like a normal lady. And, I mean, he's good looking. He is. He's
a tall drink of water.
Yeah.
Nice head of hair, you know?
Yeah, he's got good hair. He's got nice pale eyes. Like, he's good looking. And yeah, so I have no idea how this happened, although she did give an interview, and I am trying to unearth it because there are just so many things.
Was he like a friend of her kids?
No.
We met at my son's funeral, you know?
Oh my goodness. They did not meet at the son's funeral, but in an interview that she gave that was called The Countess of Monte Cristo for the Sunday Post, which was written by, quote, Our Lady Special Commissioner, who doesn't have a name, it would seem. But whatever. So she said, quote, I lost my boy 2 years ago, and I am certain I would have died of grief but for Mr. Smith-Wilkinson. He took over all my arrangements for me, and was very kind, and Then I made him my private secretary. And
Yes,
there, our little romance started. We both got very fond of each other, and although he is younger, we married, and are extremely happy. We are always together, never apart. During the war, he was in the Grenadier Guards. So, I don't think that's true. I mean, he was in the war, and that is true, because he was later arrested for public drunkenness very shortly thereafter. And the judge heard evidence from people who knew him being like, he was in the war. It happens. And the judge was like, he seems sorry. And the case was dismissed.
Just don't do it again.
Yeah, and so
she was kind of skeevy.
She was something, all right.
I mean, she literally had a position of power. She was, and while he was technically legal, I mean, that's a huge age. It's kind of creepy.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Right about this time, when she is newly married to Mr. Smith-Wilkinson, she decides to join society in a big, big way.
Okay.
And a lot of newspapers picked up this same wire, but this is from a United States newspaper. So, like, she was talked about.
She made it across the pond.
Yeah. So, I think this is maybe the University of Minnesota. But the headline is, "It Made Even Parisians Gasp."
Oh.
Extravagant costume worn by Mrs. Wilkinson of England. Quote, temperance queen who never wears the same gown twice gives the French a sensation. Paris. No longer afraid of being called profiteers, the owner of war millions are now bringing them out for the grand season. The result is that Paris is witnessing a carnival of flamboyant extravagance unequaled, according to many critics, since the days of Nero. Mrs. Wilkinson, English temperance queen, who for 3 weeks has made Paris fall back and gasp, appeared at the Pre-Catalan restaurant one Saturday night with her third husband, who is 24 years old, wearing on her head a genuine crown composed of more than 1,000 pearls and rhinestones. The crown was formerly worn by the Grand Duchess Xenia of Russia. Mrs. Wilkinson bought the trifle for $800,000.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Suspended beneath her chin was a cluster of the famous Shrewsbury pearls, more than 300 years old. They were bought by Mrs. Wilkinson from the English Museum so she could wear them in Paris. Her dress was interwoven with more than 800 genuine diamonds, and her gown and other gems being set in her stockings and shoes. Altogether, Mrs. Wilkinson estimated her costume to be worth in the neighborhood of $1,500,000.
Do you want to know how much 800,000 is worth now?
Yeah.
10,920,120. That's bananas.
Yeah, the thing about these numbers is that they are all different in every report. So
I'm also having a really difficult time connecting all of that to that woman.
it was
she would just
really
look
her,
incredibly awkward in it.
and she really did do these things. So apparently she is quoted as having said, "French women have been the style setters long enough. I made up my mind I would show them what real sensations meant. I have a different gown for every day in the year. I never wear one twice."
Wow, okay.
So, following this, there are articles titled "The Woman with 1,000 Gowns," and sometimes that number is 3,000. Sometimes
Yeah.
how old the Shrewsbury Pearls are 800 years, not 300, which I think is probably just because 800 and 300 look really similar printed.
Right.
And that
it
was easy to screw up. But the Shrewsbury Pearls didn't exist, is the thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, she wore pearls. She just
made up some Shrewsbury pearls.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody likes a good story, so I guess.
Yeah. So she definitely specifically entered society to make a story. So with her husband in tow, after just having been married in 1921, they occupied the royal suite at the Claridge Hotel in Paris and dove headfirst into Parisian society. And it would seem, according to many sources, that Peggy had spent a sum between $200,000 to $750,000. And so that is where she was promptly dubbed Mrs. Monte Cristo.
Right.
And an author and journalist at the time, Basil Woon, commented that it's no easy thing to spend $750,000 in 3 weeks.
No, it's not.
No, and this didn't include the fine things that she had brought from London. So, immediately upon arriving at Claridge's, she had her entire suite redecorated, even though she was only staying for a few weeks.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And there are also rumors that she hired 5 limousines with different colored upholstery so that her car would always match what she was wearing. And that she ordered hundreds of gowns from the most expensive dressmakers on the Rue de la Pas, to match the limos, and that she wore a bunch of jewelry that she brought from London.
I am both confused and intrigued.
One report claimed that Peggy had spent at least £16,000 on hats, $32,000 in gowns, and $100,000 in loose diamonds. Now, the problem with all of these things is that, yes, they were in fact reported at the time, but I can't find any corroborating evidence of the limos. It is true that she bought just an obscene amount of gowns, and that she bought them from some of the biggest fashion houses that existed, but the number of gowns and what she spent that was reported don't actually match the figures on the books for those fashion houses. So,
also,
yes.
I'm wondering how off the rack she could really buy.
Oh, she wasn't buying off the rack. They were making her clothes for her.
Like, they would have to, like, make them from scratch, because there's only so much inseams you can take out.
Oh, no. I mean, made to, or ready to wear didn't exist. These are... No, these are fashion houses that made to measure all the time. These were mantua makers. So, like, these were, like, House of Worth.
Oof. I hope these poor bastards got paid.
Well, it doesn't seem that they didn't.
Okay.
So, anyway, there's no argument that about whether or not she spent a bunch of money and whether or not she stayed in suites in Paris. Like, all of that definitely happened. But there's a lot of questionable numbers and questionable provenance for a lot of the things that...
Which seems to track. I mean, it's that whole game of telephone.
Yeah. And, I mean, she just appeared out of nowhere in society. And I guess this was probably one of the last times that maybe you could do that, because it was just after the war, World War I, and I don't imagine that everyone knew who had died and who had inherited.
Yeah.
And, I mean, she had money and she splashed it.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, ultimately, if you have enough money, that'll get you whatever place in society you pretty much want.
And so there are images of her at balls. There are images of her... Well, I guess I only found a couple of actual photographs.
I'm going to have to look at those, because I cannot picture that woman.
Yeah, well, there are...
Paris-level gussied.
Well, it's dramatic, I must say.
It's so confusing to equate.
Yeah, it really is. She is said to have claimed to never wear a dress twice. She definitely did purchase items at the fashion houses of the time. But there is also an interesting rumor that I could neither confirm nor deny, but it comes up in several places, that her newly married husband was an aspiring dressmaker, and that he returned to London from Paris to design and supervise the construction of the gowns.
Okay. So it was like a research trip, perhaps, for her to...
I think... Well, she didn't leave Paris, so she was still there.
Okay.
And I am unclear. And one sort of assumes that he wanted to make a big splash for himself by being unveiled as the designer of these gowns. I'm not really sure. But in the summer of 1921, he apparently arrived from London by plane and brought gowns that were made to match Peggy's, and they were on mannequins, and all of the gowns were in black and white. And there's an actual photo of Peggy in this particular dress. Let me send it to you.
That's a little weird. Can you imagine just landing your plane and you got a bunch of mannequins and dresses?
Well, I mean, civilian air travel wasn't normal, so I don't know. Alright, I'm gonna drop it in the doc so you can see it. I would totally wear this dress, and all of this will be in the show notes for those of you playing along at home. Mm-hmm. It is, like, there are a lot of gray areas at this point, but...
That is so My Fair Lady.
Isn't it?
I love it. She looks
cool.
awkward as fuck in it, but I love it.
Yeah, I would wear the hell out of that. Yeah. So this is a description, and this is from the website Jazz Age Club. Mm-hmm. And it says, quote, Peggy's gown was white with huge black stripes, and she looked like a zebra. She wore a black hat with an immense ostrich feather. Her gloves were white with black fingers, and one of her stockings was black, the other white. Her shoes were studded with diamonds, and she also had a necklace of black and white pearls. In one hand, she carried an enormous 6-foot sunshade, and in another, a black and white poodle that had been especially dyed for the occasion.
Where'd a poodle at?
I don't know. That I was
I
wondering
like how
as
the
well.
Stripes vary in, like, when they're around the waist.
Yeah, me too.
It gives the illusion of a smaller waist then.
Yeah, it
like
really gives shape.
Right. It's a really, it's a well, I think I'd pick a different hat. And her poor feet look like those shoes were not right for her. But
I agree.
Other than that, I'm loving it.
Yeah, I liked it too. Apparently she caused a sensation, but not a good one, in this particular adventure in dressmaking. And the French women apparently were like, oh no, the foreigners will think this is French. Yeah. But apparently it didn't really matter that the French thought it was dumb, because she would later become known as, quote, the best dressed woman in the world. And
okay,
because of the press coverage on that night, interesting things happened, like more tabloid gossip, but also someone tried to rob the hotel and went to the wrong room. Yeah, so it, like, all of this is just a very, very strange combination of things.
It really is.
And so in July of 1921, the New York Times weighs in. And the headline is, Denies She Has Gold Tubs. And Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson says other stories are exaggerated.
Okay.
London, July 19th. Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson, stories of whose spending of millions for luxuries have appeared in the press, has written to thank the Nottingham Guardian for, quote, not having published the exaggerated accounts which appeared in other papers in reference to myself. For instance, I am credited with having paid a fabulous price for a jeweled headdress. It is true that I bought one from a lady who was compelled to sell. She told me her story and how very much money was wanted, and as I had just returned from the races, having won, I felt that it would be charity to do so. But at the same time, I have mentioned to no one the price I gave. Also, it is stated that I possess 2 golden tubs. This is too silly for words.
Alrighty then.
Yes, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume she has 1 golden tub. Because...
Yeah, because she didn't totally deny it, but yeah.
Yeah. So, there's just a lot going on, and then a lot that is eventually debunked. At one point, her husband, started advertising for a job. Like, he needed one.
Oh, okay.
Because his wife did not give him any money. And so he actually needed to get a job and go to work, despite the fact that he was married to this apparently fabulously wealthy woman. So that's kind of interesting. She was pretty mad about him advertising in the paper.
Where'd he get the money to advertise it if he needed a job?
I mean, in the classifieds.
Oh, I suppose.
I mean, where everybody does that. Yeah, so it is all very strange. In the Hull Daily Mail on Saturday, the 20th of January of 1923, there's a headline that says, "Married life intolerable. Wealthy woman's husband looking for work." Mr. Smith-Wilkinson, the penniless husband of a wealthy wife who some time ago gained some notoriety as, quote, the best-dressed woman in the world, went to Liverpool on Friday from Matlock, where he had been staying for some time, since his wife sailed for South Africa, leaving him behind with only his money pension of 8 pence a week. The husband announced that he is anxious to secure work. It was on this quest that he went to Liverpool. A position has been offered to him as a dance master at the Assembly Rooms, New Brighton. He is stated to be an expert dancer and a dress designer, of which he has had experience in Paris. He is 28 years of age, and his wife is understood to be nearly twice his age. In the course of an interview on Friday, Mr. Smith-Wilkinson said his life had become intolerable on account of his wife's obsession for clothes, the bungalow in which they lived being filled with hundreds of garments of the costliest description. Well, she spent thousands on dresses. She had little to spare for life's necessities. In order that rooms could be utilized for the storage of clothes, he had had to sleep on the kitchen floor. He summed up his married life as, quote, intolerable. He also stated that his wife is in possession of ample means and that the content of the bungalow would fetch £50,000.
So why didn't he sell off some of the garments? I'm sure she wouldn't notice, and if she doesn't wear them again...
I imagine he's afraid of her. I don't know.
He's like, the other two died. Like, I don't...
He's not wrong. So yeah, it's a very weird situation.
It really is.
And there is an entire, as I said earlier, feature post where she walks a female correspondent of the Sunday Post through all of her collections and her wardrobes that hold hundreds of dresses, and there's a description of the inside of the bungalow, and it is described as, quote, an Aladdin's cave of treasures, and it's very intense. And there's also an extremely flattering, I think, drawing. I don't think it's a photograph of her.
Okay.
And I will link to that also in the show notes. But it is on the British newspaper archive, so okay. I'm not sure if a membership will be required. I think you might get a couple freebies, but just a heads up there. So that is what's happening there. And this seems to continue, but not for very long. She builds up this reputation incredibly quickly. And
sensing an Icarus situation going on here.
There's a little something to be said. One of my favorite news articles from the time was written by John Bull, and it is the shadiest thing I have ever read. Like, holy shit. It is the 26th of November, 1921. To Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson, Ritz Hotel, London. Dear Madam, I see it announced that you are back at the Ritz with more than 20 trunks containing costumes of all descriptions, most of which, presumably, you will don during your stay, to give your fellow visitors a treat. I trust you will take care to not catch a chill when changing, on cold days, for it is shocking to contemplate what a loss you would be to the costumiers of London and Paris. May I conclude by reminding you of the approach of Christmas, and by drawing your attention to my The Greatest of Thee fund, which gladly welcomes parcels of cast-off raiment. Raiment? I don't know. I don't think that word is correctly typed. For distribution amongst the less fortunate. Only please pick out those that don't shout the whole length of Piccadilly.
Oh!
Yeah. So that's
delightful little shade.
Some amazing shade. Right there. It's my favorite shade.
I can see that.
Yeah. And this would carry on until it came to a screeching halt in December of 1924. So, a month later.
Christmas time.
Yeah. A headline in the Warwick and Warwickshire Advertiser says, "A secret funeral."
Oh.
At Nottingham on Saturday, the remains of Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson, described as, quote, the best-dressed woman in the world, were buried in a vault where 2 of her husbands are interred. The utmost secrecy was maintained, and scores at the graveside did not know the identity of the dead person.
Oh, wow.
I am somewhat unclear why we want to not know the identity of the dead person, but whatever. And if you were wondering, well, did her husband fare better once she was no longer with us? Did he finally...
Did he get to sleep in a bed?
Yeah, did he get to sleep in a bed? Well, your answer would be no.
Oh.
So, in the Sheffield Daily Telegraph on the 5th of July, 1926, I guess it took this long to start working its way through the courts. Oh no, I changed the page. All right. Husband and his late wife's estate. The solicitors for Mr. Edward Henry Smith-Wilkinson have served a writ on the executors in Nottingham of his late wife, Mrs. Margaret Smith-Wilkinson, who died last year in a London nursing home, aged 60 years.
Oh.
Yeah, it seems that she died following a surgery or a long illness.
Okay.
Both of those things could be true. I don't know. Mr. Smith-Wilkinson, seen by a representative at Matlock, confirmed the service of the writ. The claim totals just over £1,000. Included in the claim are jewelry, etc., of his own presents given him before marriage by the deceased lady, including a gent's gold watch valued at £60, and goods bought and given to the widower, who is 27 years of age. So, 27 apparently, not... I thought he was younger than that, but...
He's still a baby.
Oh, he is, and I mean, he's a widower at this point, so... he was the third husband of Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson. Included in the claim is a half share of £1,000 paid for a specially taken film entitled Peeps into the Lives of Mr. and Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson, which actually was a film that was made, although I couldn't find anything more about it.
Oh, I want to see it now.
Me too. The deceased lady, who created a sensation in London and Paris as the best-dressed woman in the world, died worth £17,000 and left nothing to her husband. Mr. Smith-Wilkinson has been granted permission by the Poor Persons Department of the High Court to sue in forma pauperis. Oh, in forma pauperis. That's a term I had never heard before, but that makes sense. Because he does not have a £2 per week income. Mr. Smith-Wilkinson at present is in casual employment as a guide at the Great Mason Tavern on Heights of Mason and spends most days underground explaining to visitors the wonders of the cavern. He laughingly told our representative that the best description of his profession at the moment was that of a caveman. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it just keeps going. And the most frequent amount that has been given to her estate that I've seen is £17,000. But there are also articles in which her husband is quoted saying that she was worth £60,000. And this is, of course, £60,000 in the 1920s. So that's a lot of money.
Right?
Yeah, so that... It turns out that after she passed and the sale of her jewelry was happening, that it was found that many of the things were not real, or her widowed husband informed people of how much the things really cost and where they came from, and it was not where she said they did.
Oh,
so,
I mean, it's kind of smart, I guess.
Yeah, even specifically the Shrewsbury pearls, which were not.
So 17,000, just 17,000 is $262,206.27.
Yep.
That's a decent chunk of change, though.
Yeah, and that was just like what she had on hand. Oh, yeah. In the Weekly Dispatch of London on the 15th of March, 1925, that is when her husband claims that her estate is worth £60,000 and that there were 3 wills.
Oh.
Yes. I believe, or quote, I believe my wife died worth about £60,000, and I now learn that she made 3 different wills within 5 years since I married her. I feel sure one of them was entirely in my favor, he said.
At least one of them.
She wrote that will suddenly after our marriage in a Sheffield garage when we were motoring together.
Like you do.
Yes. Mr. Smith-Wilkinson's name was originally Smith, but Wilkinson was added because he said today Smith was too common for my wife. Yeah, all right. So now, in 1927, in the Dundee Evening Telegraph, there is an article that says judge refuses to try case. Widower's claims upon wife's effects. Memories of a woman who a few years ago attracted worldwide attention, she was called the best dressed woman in the world, were revived at Nottingham Assizes. I don't know what that word means. Oh, I just can't read it because it's an old newspaper. Sorry. It zooms in when I scroll, which does not make it easy to read. All right. Edward Henry Smith-Wilkinson of Matlock Dale brought a claim against the executors, not executors, although that would be funny.
Although, yeah.
Yes, of his late wife, Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson, in respect of certain articles under her will. The original claim exceeded £1,000 and included $500 as a share of a $1,000 film specially taken giving incidents in Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson's life. This, however, was dropped. The defendants were Messrs. H. J. Spencer and J. Pollard and J. Leighton of Nottingham and Mr. Ackerman of Birmingham. The actual values of the articles claimed was £316.14. When the jury was sworn in, Mr. Justice Sherman refused to try the action, pointing out that it was largely a matter of detail and of identifying various articles. He suggested that it should go through the registrar of the county court. There was a lengthy consultation between the judge and counsel for the parties, and ultimately his lordship referred the action to the official referee or to anyone else on whom parties could agree. Yes.
He's like, I don't got time for this.
In a brief opening statement, Mr. G. Smallwood, plaintiff's counsel, said that Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson was extravagant and fond of ornamentation quite beyond any ordinary mind. She was one of those women, said counsel, who appeared prominently just after the war. It might seem curious that she should have showered jewelry on her husband, but it was not curious, for it was all in keeping with her character. So, he was basically suing for jewelry, and she was also known to have gifted jewelry to, like, dancing masters and people who worked for her, or anybody else.
Assistant.
Personal assistants. So, yes, I'm now trying to chase down why, or who actually got the money.
It's also weird because, I'm guessing maybe part of the assets would have been sold off to pay for the nursing home care and the funeral and things like that, but obviously she had sold off her hotels.
Yeah, and she sold her home and her bungalow. Like, all of this happened before she went into the nursing home, and that is also a little bit unclear why all of that happened. I'm guessing that she was running out of money.
Right. If you combine that with her going in for surgery, I could see her anticipating and prepping for perhaps not coming out of it as hoped. It's all very weird. Like, just little details, like the secretive funeral and the fact that nothing was left to the husband, and like just all these little things. And then you look at her and you're like, really? I would not have guessed that you were this complex of a human being.
Yeah. So in early December of 1924, Peggy was in London, and she had sold all of her possessions in Nottingham, and following an operation, apparently, died in St. Thomas's nursing home.
Okay.
It was claimed that she was 49 years old. She was, in fact, at least a decade older. And afterwards, it's not actually known what happened to Edward.
Oh.
So that's fun. And I still cannot find who she actually left the stuff to. Let's wrap it up with with one last quote to send off Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson. From the Dundee Courier, Monday, 16th of March, 1925. March 16th was my high school boyfriend's birthday. All right. Husband left out of best dressed woman's will. Society career recalled. Spent £30,000 on clothes in a year. The romantic story of Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson, who claimed to be the best dressed woman in the world and who died at St. Thomas's Nursing Home, London, last December, is revived, I hope not, by the announcement that her husband is not a beneficiary under her will. Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson was 60 years old at the time of her death, and her husband 28. He stated in an interview at Matlock on Saturday that during their 5 years married life, his wife made 3 wills, one of which left her whole estate to him. He added that he believed his wife left £40,000 and that he had engaged solicitors to deal with his claims. During her meteoric career in London, Mrs. Smith-Wilkinson startled society with her extravagant expenditure, her wonderful wardrobe, and an amazing collection of jewels. In America, they called her, quote, the Countess of Monte Cristo, and said that she bathed in a gold tub and that her teeth were stopped with real diamonds. When she went to Paris, her lavish expenditure on the latest creations aroused intense excitement, and the races at Auteuil were actually held up by the crowd that followed her and her retinue of mannequins across the famous course. So that happened. Married 3 times, her third husband was a young Matlock man who, at her request, changed his name by deed poll to Smith-Wilkinson. Mr. Smith-Wilkinson later declared that in less than 12 months his wife spent £30,000 on clothes in London and in Paris, and that he scrubbed the floors, cooked the meals, and worked in the garden, receiving from his wife 8 cents a week. So that is a thing. And the floors and such that he scrubbed were of a public house that they owned.
Ah, okay.
And where I think they lived at the tail end. Or possibly at the very beginning. It's a little unclear, as with literally everything.
I was going to say.
Yep. And I am sorry to say that I still don't know who got the money. But I don't think it was very much money, so.
Right?
Whatever.
Wow.
Yes. Oh gosh, I talked forever. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's a good story.
There were just so many articles.
Right? I'm going to say fascinating lady.
Yeah. Like, I bookmarked 28 separate articles in different newspapers.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, if you gave us a listen last episode, you will have heard me cover the origin of spinsters and do a quick little rundown on some of my faves, both in literature and in real life. So, this time, I'm diving headfirst into my love of Miss Havisham and talking about one of the alleged inspirations for her character. While it's suspected that Dickens might have had multiple inspirations for Miss Havisham, there's two women that are most credited to being his creepy little muse. Initially, I started looking at Eliza Emily Donenthorne, and then I found that there was another named Jane Lewson. And so I was like, okay, so then I started going down both holes at the same time, and I was like, I will cover both. And then I just realized that I couldn't half-ass this, so I picked my favorite of the two. And today, I would like to introduce you to Lady Jane Lewson.
Ooh.
So, for those of you who have never been forced to read Great Expectations, or who read it and then instantly forgot about it,
Or who listened to Alanis Morissette.
right,
And wondered what that was all about.
Exactly. I'm gonna just do a little brief as to who Miss Havisham in literary form was.
Yes, please.
So Miss Havisham is what some may say bitter. She's definitely a recluse who shut herself in her mini mansion after being jilted on her wedding day. Not only does she never leave the house, like part of her never really leaves the day that she was jilted.
Yes.
She stopped all the clocks at 20 minutes to 9, which was the exact time that she received the letter calling off the wedding. She received it on the morning of.
Oh, yeah, because it would be wedding breakfasts at that time.
Exactly.
Oh, jeez. That wedding must have been at 9.
Right? So many theorize that this is so that she's unaware of time passing, which is a bit kooky, yep. But then she takes it to, like, a whole other level by continuously wearing her wedding clothes and leaving the prepared wedding feast to decay in the room that it was set.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this over the years.
Yep. So, from the book, I crossed the staircase landing and entered the room she indicated. From that room, too, the daylight was completely excluded, and it was airless smell that was oppressive. A fire had been lately kindled in the damp, old-fashioned grate, and it was more disposed to go out than turn up, and the reluctant smoke which hung in the room seemed colder than the clearer air, like in our own marsh mist. Certain wintry branches of candles on the high chimney piece faintly lit the chamber, or it would be more expressive to say faintly troubled its darkness. It was spacious, and dare I say, had once been handsome, but everything disconcertable thing that it was covered in dust and mold and dropping to pieces. The most prominent object was a long table with a tablecloth spread on it, as if a feast had been in preparation when the house and the clocks all stopped together. An epergne or centerpiece of some kind was in the middle of this cloth. It was so overly hung with cobwebs that its form was quite undistinguishable, and as I looked along the yellow expanse, out of which I remember its seeming to grow like a black fungus.
Oh dear.
I just remembered arachnophobia. Perhaps I should cut it here and not continue to read.
No, it's fine. I already know where it's going.
Okay.
I've read this book many times.
I figured as such, but I didn't want to trigger anything.
Nah, it's alright.
I saw speckle-legged spiders with blotchy bodies running home from it and running out from it, as if some circumstances of the greatest public importance had just transpired in the spider community. I love that line. I heard the mice, too, rattling behind the panels, as if some occurrence were important to their interests. But the black beetles took no notice of the agitation and groped about the hearth in ponderously elderly way, as if they were short-sighted and hard of hearing and not on terms with one another. These crawling things had fascinated my attention, and I was watching them from a distance when Miss Havisham laid a hand upon my shoulder. In her other hand she had a crutched-head stick on which she leaned, and she looked like the witch of the place. Now, as a result of her experiences, Miss Havisham's not really a fan of humanity in general, but particularly men. She is definitely scorned. So she adopts a young girl, Estella, and is training her to be cold and cruel so that she'll go forth and break men's hearts as her heart has been broken.
Yes, because she's hot.
Yeah, she is. She then invites the young Pip to the house so that Estella has a little plaything to practice on.
Oh, Pip.
Poor Pip. Although she eventually regrets what she has done and her character starts to change, Miss Havisham has an ending that's as tragic as her life.
Yes.
Random and awkwardly placed side note here, because I didn't know where else to kind of stick it in, but there is a link in the show notes to a recipe for Miss Havisham's bride cake, and that page also has like a delightful free Hobbit-themed cookbook, and I'm pretty much obsessed overall with the site. The woman behind it does literary-themed dinners, and it's marvelous. So definitely check it out. Also, it involves fruitcake and almond paste. Very interesting. So, there really is more to Miss Havisham.
Marzipan. I
love marzipan. But I'm going to leave you
hungry again.
So I'm going to leave you to dive into Miss Havisham herself on your own. And I've put a link to a copy of Great Expectations in the show. Yeah, in the show notes, as it's part of the Gutenberg project now. So it's super easy to. Yeah, so it's there for you. You all to take a trip down memory lane, or read more about the spiders and mice and beetles. So how does Lady right? So how does Lady Jane Lewson fit into this? Now, it is clear that Lady Lewson's life has morphed into its own folklore, and there's much like Miss Countess of Monte Cristo. There's like varying accounts out there. So we're going to begin with the facts that have been established. Jane Lewson was born Jane Vaughan. She claimed to be born in 1700 on Essex Street, the Strand in London. There is literally zero documentation on when this woman was actually born.
Parish registries burned pretty frequently.
Mm-hmm. She died on the 28th of May, 1816.
Wow.
At her home at number 12 Coldbath Square, Clerkenwell, at the age of 116. Yeah.
Hot damn.
116. Now, Lady Lewson was born into a rather wealthy family, but was not an actual lady in title. That's a nickname we'll get to later. So, now, unlike Miss Havisham, she did actually marry a gentleman who was also wealthy. He tragically died when she was 26, leaving her to raise a daughter alone. Now, there is one person who was pulling records that found somebody who might have been this same person who had 3 children, but the children aren't even part of this, really. So even these small facts that we have are actually kind of disputed here and there. But according to the 1846 book, The History and Antiquities of the County of Suffolk by Alfred Inigo, Jane Vaughan, according to her burial at Bunhill Fields, was buried as Jane Lewson, not Lewson, and was aged 96, not 116, making her birth closer to 1720 rather than 1700. It's also believed that her husband had previously been married in Great Yarmouth, but his wife, Hepzibah, died. And I'm only putting that in there because I really like the name Hepzibah. So that's only why it's in there, because I just think it's a really fun name. The truth is, the accuracy of these details aren't really necessary for our story, whether she was 116, 117, 96. It's still really fucking impressive for the day. But what is important are the correlations to Miss Havisham. So it all began when her daughter married and moved away, leaving Lady Lewson alone in her mansion in Clerkenwell. It began slowly, As things do, she stopped having visitors over, though she still had her servants change the sheets in the numerous guest bedrooms every single morning for like 50 years. She's yeah, she's trips outside the mansion grew infrequent, but when she did go out, people noticed.
I bet they did.
They did, because her fashion sensibilities were hard to miss. They did not stray from the time during which George I reigned, so like 1714 to 1727. She wore a large tête de mouton made of horsehair. It's pretty much just a wig. On her head.
Yes, but I don't think I've ever heard it pronounced.
Yes, well, I'm on 90 days of Duolingo French, so I slide that shit in when I can.
I appreciate it.
Nearly a half-foot high, over which her hair was turned up, a cap over it which nodded under her chin, and 3 or 4 curls hanging down her neck.
She's Marie Antoinetting it.
She pretty much is. She always wore powder. Her body was generally adorned in silk gowns with a long train that had a deep flounce all around, very long waist, very tightly laced up to her neck, around which was kind of a ruffle or a frill. The sleeves of her gown came below the elbow, a large straw bonnet, high-heeled shoes, and a large black silk cloak trimmed with lace. And she carried with her a gold-headed cane, and that completed her costume for roughly 80 friggin' years.
I hope she didn't wear panniers.
So,
I mean, wrong time period, I think, but...
I think so. So as the years passed, every time she went out, she began to resemble like some kind of time-traveling curiosity from like a completely different era. This, in fact, along with the manner that she actually dressed herself, is what earned her the moniker Lady Lewson. She seemed
fair enough.
so archaic, but grand in this city that was like rapidly modernizing. And I'm pretty much here for it all. Like, just...
I want to be friends with her.
I really do. Honest, seriously.
I am being quite serious.
I'm a bit in love with her, because I think she's amazing. So,
yeah.
As strange as her clothing may seem, the interior of the house started to become even stranger. And you can see the resemblance to Miss Havisham kind of rapidly forming now.
Mm-hmm.
The strangeness that had begun to spiral seems clearly linked to either a paranoia of death or like just being deeply stubborn and refusing to give death an option to take her without a fight. Not even necessarily her death alone, but like death in general.
Okay.
So I should note here that there's actually 2 schools of thoughts on this. I personally believe the death route. The other is that she hated cleaning and that extended to herself and her house. Given the fact that she did dress so extravagantly when she did leave the house.
Well, she had bedclothes changed every day.
Right. I mean, there's stuff in there that just doesn't add up So I'm going with the death route. So either way, she became more and more eccentric as time passed, which, tracks. As her daughter left, she retained only one of the group of servants that had been there, and it was an older woman. And after that lady passed on, an old man who looked after several houses in the square and would like go on errands for her, clean her shoes, stuff like that, was eventually taken in as her steward, butler, cook, and housemaid. And then, with the exception of 2 old lap dogs and a cat, he was her only companion. The house was large, elegantly furnished, but really run down. She allowed absolutely nothing besides the bedding to be changed, moved, thrown out, washed, or cleaned. The rooms grew duskier as like the dust settled on the tables, chairs, picture frames, even mirrors. The walls themselves began to actually be tinted by dirt. The windows would be eventually so crusted with dirt that they ceased to let any light in. And it was said that her motivation behind the windows was that she feared someone would break one while cleaning and either injure themselves severely or allow germs in. And she did not abide germs.
It sounds like she maybe had some agoraphobia or something.
Yeah. So, this brings us to her, I guess I'm just going to say unusual self-care.
Okay.
Jane never washed, as she believed those who did so caught colds. So instead, she smeared herself, like you do, with hog's lard every morning because it was soft and lubricating.
What?
Hog's lard that never got washed off, nor did the makeup that she pancaked over the top of it daily. Believing each of these layers were further protection against disease, she maintained that she had no need for drug or doctors.
Well, apparently she was right.
Right? Hog's lard,
her immune
and
system
powder.
must have been amazing.
Seriously.
Jesus.
To further avoid germs, she would only drink tea out of her favorite cup, believing this cup was the likelihood, it cut the likelihood, rather, of her catching a cold, and she would only sit in one specific chair. So she had her favorite teacup and her favorite chair.
Oh, dear.
As her eccentricity progressed, she insisted that nothing be moved. So, almost like she had this mystical alignment of her possessions and like a macabre feng shui, and that was responsible for like her remarkable longevity and health. I kind of liken it to like when you're in middle school, you're like, if I throw this piece of paper and it makes it in that wastebasket, he totally likes me.
Wow.
Kind of just like, yeah, she, Oddly though, like whatever she was doing worked. Her overall health was good. This is just so messed up. It was said that at the age of 87, where many were lucky to still have any teeth left, she actually cut 2 new ones. Which is just so bizarre.
I mean, there is a calcification issue that people can have that ejects calcified chunks from their mouth. So
she got 2 of them at the age of 87.
That's gross.
And she barely suffered an hour's illness, though she would begin to lose her sight towards the end, which, dude, you've seen my glasses. Lady Jane.
Fine.
Right. Lady Jane loved her garden, and that was pretty much the only part of her home that was super well maintained. And she would sit in it and read all of the time. And on rare occasion where she did invite the few acquaintances that she had left alive to visit, they would take tea with her there. They were never allowed in the house. In the garden, they would discuss old times, and she was reputed to actually have had an excellent memory and loved relating events from the early 1700s. This woman lived through 5 reigns and was supposed to be the most faithful historian of her time.
Wow.
Edith Sitwell, in her book English Eccentrics, described Lady Lewson as a strange and ancient trumpery, stating her likeness to a cobweb is produced by the fact she wears ruffs and cuffs and farringales of her youth. In what seemed a further defiance of the natural order, Lady Lawson, at the age of 87, cut 2 new teeth, which were a source of pride to her and wonder to her neighbors. Edith continued, her large house in Cold Bath Square contains only 4 other beings, ghosts like herself, 2 lapdogs, an aged cat, and an old man whose occupation had been that of wandering from house to house, in the distance earning pieces of food by running errands and cleaning boots. This man acted as her cook, butler, and by that time, sole servant. As the years went on, many thought Our Lady immortal.
Well...
But sadly, on Tuesday, May the 28th in 1816, at what she claimed was the age of 116, Lady Lewson lost her battle with death. On June 3rd, she was buried in the famous Dissenters' Graveyard, Bunhill Fields, which contained the remains of Daniel Defoe and William Blank, amongst other luminaries.
Huh.
Lady Lewson's fame is attested by the fact that obituaries to her appeared in several publications, including The Observer. Each stressed that she had died at the age of 116 and lived through the reigns of 5 monarchs. Her funeral included a grand hearse pulled by 4 horses. 2 other carriages accompanied it, containing Mr. Anthony of Clerkenwell, her executor, and a few relations that she always refused to see. After her death, a witness recalled visiting the house and was shocked to find the number of bolts and bars fitted to the doors and windows. The ceiling of the upper floors was lined with bars to prevent anyone getting into the property through the ceiling. The cinder ashes had not been removed for many years and were piled up as if to form beds. While Dickens was only 4 when Lady Jane passed on, I mean, her story's pretty fucking legendary. And everyone knew of it. And there are many differences, particularly in age. Dude, did you know Miss Havisham was only 40?
Yes, but I
Dickens
did not remember that until
Yeah.
you just said so.
Yeah, Dickens was a cheeky fucker. And the fact that she married and had her own daughter and clearly didn't hate men. So that might be where the other potential inspiration comes in. But
I mean, Dickens got paid by the word.
That's true. But that, dearies, is a deep dive for like another day for the other potential inspirations. But I give to you who I am like 90% convinced is the original Miss Havisham.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is almost certainly the case.
And I really wish I could have hung out in the garden with Lady Jane Lewson, because she seems like a delight, if not quirky, but in a good way.
Weird as shit, but probably stinky.
Yeah, seriously.
Although, maybe not. If she's never messed up her skin biome with anything acidic or
Nothing
basic.
could reach it. She was a walking candle.
That's actually a really good point. I don't know how she didn't go up in flames.
Like, just lard and powder, lard and powder, lard and powder. 4 decades.
Ew.
Like that.
Ew.
Right?
Ew.
Yeah.
Ew.
Indeed. You, but also good on you. Like, you fight death.
Like, you do you, Lady
Right?
Jane.
She didn't hurt anybody.
You
She
do
wasn't
you.
mean.
No.
But,
She
quirky
seemed like
as-
she needed a little mental health support.
Yeah, there's clearly some issues in there.
But also, there wasn't any available at the time.
Right.
So.
Right. And she, at that point, she would have seen so many people just die and leave. And
I mean, wow.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't even matter if she lived to be 96 or 116. At that
Seriously.
time.
96 was like just, I can't
Yeah.
even, that's just.
And I mean, the person who lived with her must have just at that point been just living there. Like,
Right.
she couldn't have been paying him. I wouldn't think. Like, wow.
She had money though, so who knows?
Oh, that's true. She did have money.
Maybe her longevity is where the witchiness of Miss Havisham came in.
I mean, the loneliness.
Yeah, but she had 2 dogs and a cat, and
Not
this
for 116 years.
no, not for that long. She wasn't, specifically. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, that loneliness, I'm sure, indeed.
I don't, yeah. I certainly think that's got to be one of the people.
It has to be. It's just too... And what cracks me up is that there's not nearly the amount of information written on her as there is about the other person, who, and she's at least in England. The other person was born in South Africa and ended up in Australia. So just even knowledge of her getting to Dickens would have been... But yeah.
I mean, Dickens was a reporter.
That's true. But yeah, I'm going with Lady Jane. That's
like
not
it.
where the phrase Lady Jane comes from, though.
No, that's a different Lady Jane. Well, there are several concerning Lady Janes throughout history, including a beheaded queen.
Yes, yes.
But,
indeed. She was, 18?
I don't know. She was young.
Yeah, she was baby. That was Jane Grey. Grey, right? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And on that uplifting note, it actually brings us to...
The weekly worst way to die.
By us singing.
Oh no. Now it's stuck in my head again. Damn it. Oh, it had gone away.
Oh no.
Okay, it's fine. What is your weekly worst way to die?
My weekly worst way to die is accidentally setting myself on fire via fireplace because of my big old rotting wedding dress and or the amount of hog lard I've got on me.
Oh my god. I am amazed that is not how that woman died.
Right?
How is that not how that woman died?
I don't know. I cannot fathom.
No.
Because, I mean, lard is, that's thick. That is thick stuff.
Ew.
Oh, and stinky.
Ew.
That's not, no.
Yeah.
What about you?
Literal glass ceilings.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. Shudder.
That's mine. Oh, man.
So, hey. Wanna be spooky internet friends?
Probably.
We promise to bathe.
Fair.
We're Bones and Bobbins on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, all of the social medias. Or you can just find us at bonesandbobbins.com. That's cool too.
Also true. And don't forget to rate and review this podcast because it pleases the internet gremlins. And that's how we show up in recommendations so that other morbid souls can find us.
Bring forth the morbid souls.
The morbid souls?
The morbid souls.
Yes, we want all of them.
Still freaking out about the hog lard powder.
Do not bring forth
No.
the old lady living candles, please.
Whew. And on that note,
Mm-hmm.
let us leave you with some advice that you should never forget.
Yes.
Lock your doors.
And don't run with scissors.
Each episode of the Bones and Bobbins podcast is written and researched by Haley Pierson-Cox and Natalie Hoyce. Our music was composed by Loyalty Freak Music. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bones and Bobbins. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, or check us out wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts so you won't miss a minute of our strange and creepy content.